Scott Robertson was fired this week as All Blacks coach. Massive waves going through the world of rugby. This is something which we did not expect or see coming in 2026. And I do know that there's a lot of videos that's being shared all over the internet talking about this topic. And originally, I wasn't going to do a video and talk about it because I feel there's so much content out there. But after having a lot of people in my community reach out asking for my opinion, and especially on the school platform where I do a lot of my coaching, a lot of people ask me to give my insights around this topic. I think firstly, I want to start off with that I have a lot of respect for the New Zealand Rugby Union, for the All Blacks, what they stand for as a team, and also all the players involved. That is very important, as well as for Scott Robertson and his staff. This is not a great feeling when this happens to you as a coach. Being a professional rugby coach here in France as well, and also at times felt that pressure when the performance is down. It's not always easy. So the goal of this video is to give you a bit of insights to what coaches go through, why coaches get fired, and, what does it actually mean when you lose the locker room? How standards, culture decide the outcomes long before the results actually do. So this is a tricky one. I'm going to do my best here to tread carefully and just give my point of view. So guys, this is a special episode on the Coach G Show. So thank you for joining and thank you for supporting my platform here on YouTube and Spotify as well, and all various other platforms. And looking forward to sharing my insights with you guys. So to start off this question, was Scott Robertson sacked because the All Blacks were underperforming, or because they weren't performing the way people expect them to? Because we all know for so many years the All Blacks have been a dominating force. I've been fortunate enough to have had a great career to play against the All Blacks. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired rugby player. I'm Guthrie Steenkamp. I played for South Africa, I played for the Bulls, and I played for Toulouse. So I've been fortunate enough to play against great teams. And I know what it means to those players wearing that black jersey. The same coming to South Africa, being a Springbok, what it means to wear that green and gold. We wear that jersey with pride. We always give it our best. And I do think it's important for people to know players don't deliberately underperform. Coaches don't deliberately, do things that can disrupt the performance of a team. But I think the question that we need to ask is that, were they really underperforming? Maybe. I've seen some stats where we've seen, I think it was at 74% win rate compared to other coaches where they were 80% plus. Are the standards maybe too high? Because if you look at the All Blacks, they've been second on the world ranking charts, right? That's a great feat. And obviously they lost a few key games last year. Looking the big loss against South Africa, obviously they lost against Argentina as well, and then also England. I think the question I want to ask is that, are they really underperforming? Or is the standards so high that we are now defining this as an All Black team that is not performing? Because there are some great players. We've seen some great games by the ABs over the last few years, and it's not easy transitioning post-World Cup, taking over team. And I want to reiterate that we need to be clear on this. And in this video, I don't want to determine whether the decision to sack Scott Robertson was right or not. I want to talk about key topics. So what are the real standards and the performance criteria for the All Blacks? Because I think that's the big question you need to ask. When a coach gets fired in the professional game, that means either team is underperforming, but how do you define that? Because how do you define success for the All Blacks? Is it not losing a game at all? Is it the style of rugby? Is it the type of rugby they are playing? Is it the dominance? Is it their image? Is it about rebuilding towards the World Cup? Is it about maintaining that aura and that identity? You need to really ask those questions. What are the real standards? Are the standards potentially too high to which the All Black team and the players are being measured? Is the pressure of playing for the All Blacks or coaching the All Blacks so much that certain things kind of fall through the cracks? But I think those are the real questions you need to ask, because in my mind, Is it the right call? I don't know. I don't want to answer that, to be honest with you. Scott Robertson, he's a great man. I don't know him personally. I've interacted maybe once or twice with him. But, the energy he brings and what he did at the Crusaders, that must be respected. But you can't blame one man. So if the performance is not up to standard, you need to look at all angles. That's my point of view. You can't just blame. And often we're starting to see more and more now in the rugby world where coaches just get fired left, right, and center. There's no longer that notion of a long-term plan, a project. We see in France coaches getting fired. And often we hear that the coach has lost the locker room. So I want to talk about that. What does that actually mean, you've lost the locker room? Because we live in an era today where the voices of the players bear a lot of weight. And I'm all for player accountability and player responsibility and leadership. That is very important. But do we need to rely so much on the player input? Yes or no? Those are the questions that need to be asked. At the end of the day, a great player doesn't mean you'll become a great coach. I was fortunate enough to be involved with teams. We had strong leaders like Victor Matfield, Ryan Abana, John Smith, Gisborta, Jacques Fourie, Jean de Villiers, so many great players. You got to ask those questions. What does it mean losing the locker room? So to give you an example, losing the locker room can potentially mean there's a clear disconnect between the coach and the players, or the staff and the players. They're no longer aligned. Now, this can go both ways, because potentially the coaching style or the way the staff is trying to execute things, the players don't agree with it. Does that mean the coaches are wrong, or does that mean the players are wrong? That's why I believe somebody externally needs to be there to be able to assess that, and needs to establish what is actually going on. Because you can say you lost the locker room. You don't always have to like your coach, but you can respect your coach. You need to understand that your coach has your best interests at heart. And sometimes we do see players' perception versus reality can sometimes be a bit blurred. Players might think that they know it all, but they don't. But vice versa for the coaches. Okay, so, losing the locker room, you to define that. And obviously, we are not there, and I don't want to speculate on anything. But when you lose the locker room, the way I see that is that teams are no longer aligned. For me, the culture is no longer in place. There's been a drift. The message is diluted, or the players are no longer buying into what is being shared, the strategy, the vision. So we need to tread very carefully, because we can't just make the coach the scapegoat each time. Because I believe performance, it's a relationship between coaches and players. Coaches are responsible for 50% of the performance. Players are responsible for 50% of the performance. So give you some insights. Coach's job is to put the game plan into place. A coach's job is to define the right strategy, prepare the training sessions, get the players to the optimal state. And we've got different people involved. For example, you will have S&C coaches, you have mindset coaches, you've got loads of people driving, you've got a medical team. So everybody's got to be on point in terms of the job. And the way I see it, the players is the vehicle, they are the ones that's responsible for executing the strategy, executing the game plan. And we have seen from time to time that players don't always execute the game plan or the strategy accordingly, coming down to whether it is, poor preparation, or, for example, the player's mindset is not right, is on poor form. And I'm not at all saying this is the case with the All Blacks. I do believe we need to ask, okay, on what was the performance reviewed based? Was it based on the high standards and the criteria of the team? Has the culture gone sideways? Yes or no? Those are things, because that's the foundation of a strong team. If you look at the Springboks, which I believe Rassie has managed to do a brilliant job, is about setting the culture and the identity. Yes, and every player is giving his best, he's grafting, he's working hard. But are we maybe unreasonable towards the All Blacks? Because are the standards maybe being too high? Are they being compared to previous generations? I asked it a lot, and how can I say, I compare a lot the Bulls today to the Bulls in the past, and that's unfair because it's no longer the same players. I always talk about the Bulls dynasty. So we were fortunate enough to have some unbelievable players, the Bakkies Botha, the Victor Vettel, Donnie Rousseau, Farid Dupree, Brian Abana, Wynand Olivier, Pedro Vandenberg. So many great players, Gary Botha. So if you look at the All Blacks, they had all these unbelievable players, the Richie McCaws, the Dan Carter, the Conrad Smith, the Maun Nonu, the Ali Williams, Owen Franks. So many great players. Are we maybe a bit unreasonable towards the All Blacks in terms of being compared to these teams, to these generations? There's a lot of things that need to be taken into account. But the one thing which I'm a big fan of, when a team is not doing well, I do believe you need to ask the right questions, because it's too easy to play the blame game. It's too easy to say the coach is at fault, the players at fault. So I believe you gotta find the source of what's holding them back. Is it player accountability? Is it the execution of the game plan? Is it the wrong style of play? Do they actually have the right players? Do they actually have the same quality players compared to before? I do believe the All Blacks have some great quality players. You're looking at Will Jordan, looking at Satiti, you look at Ardie Sevilla. Obviously, you got the Barrett brothers as well. They do have, so got Lomax at prop, and they got some young players like Tamati coming through. There's so many great players in New Zealand. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. Is Scott Robertson potentially paying the price for deeper issues in New Zealand rugby? Potentially the pathways? Is it potentially the player development? I don't know. I don't have all these answers, but what I'm trying to create is I want to create a conversation where people need to realize the easy route is just to fire someone. Don't think because we are making a change that will just change the course of things. By firing someone doesn't just mean everything is going to be fixed. You can't just put a Band-Aid on things. You need to address the root cause of the problem. And it comes back. I still would love to have this question answered. Is the All Blacks really underperforming? Because let's also be honest, other teams are stepping up to the plate. England, they're starting to progress and evolve massively. We're seeing Argentina as well. They beat some really tough teams in the past year. We saw South Africa losing to Australia. So it comes down to the big question. I was like, how do you define success? How is All Black success being defined? How is that being defined? For me, the key ingredients to a team is the culture. It's the identity. It's the alignment. Everybody needs to respect each other. You need to be able to push the buck. You need to push the standards. I believe Scott Robertson is a quality coach. I believe he was definitely trying to bring something different to New Zealand rugby. Was it the right decision? No idea. All right? I'm not going to put myself out there. No, I'm not trying to say, because I'm not trying to stir anything. I'm not trying to create a video that's going to go viral. But I do believe people need to understand that these decisions should not be taken lightly. We need to understand where it comes from. And we also need to understand in the modern game of rugby, performance is quite intense. I remember coaching at La Rochelle when results weren't going our way. The coaches, we were under pressure. We had a lot of meetings. And I always say when a team is not performing, there's always a reason why. And it's too easy to blame it on strategy. It's too easy to blame it on the coach. You got to look at it at all angles. You got to look at the staff. You got to look at the coaches. You got to look at the players. Are they pulling their weight? Are they doing their due diligence? Are they doing their homework? Where is the issue actually lying? Those are the questions that we need to ask. And I'll be honest with you, I feel for Scott Robertson, because I can imagine coaching a nation like New Zealand. That's not easy. It's the same coaching the Springboks. We always talk about the biggest rivalry in rugby. That's the All Blacks and the Springboks. That's a lot. That's a lot of pressure. And I do believe Rassie is doing an unbelievable job. And it also got me thinking, are the All Blacks maybe unfairly being compared to the success of the Springboks in terms of what the Springboks are achieving at the moment? Is that maybe an unfair comparison? And I'm repeating this over. Are the standards maybe unreasonable compared to the All Blacks in terms of what they define as success. Is it losing 1 game a season, 2 games a season, the style of rugby they want to play? But I do believe something which I was just thought about this morning, and we've seen now Ricky Ione is playing with Leinster. Is it maybe something that needs to be spoken about? Is the Super Rugby sufficient for the New Zealand players? Do some of them maybe need to come on short-term contracts in France or playing for Champions Cup teams coming over, like we've seen the likes of Geordie Barrett in the past with Leinster as well, and now recently Ricky Ione? Those are the type of things you need to look at. But to the audience watching or listening, it's not easy. And being a coach, being responsible for a high-profile team is not easy. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. Coaches are always looking for solutions. I know a lot of the coaches that are involved with All Blacks, and I know they're quality people, quality human beings, and they got some strong set of values, and they are driven to give the best to their team. So yeah, that's just my thoughts, my insights, a bit of a ramble. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the short video. I think those are the type of things that we need to discuss, and that's my insights. I do believe when a team is not performing, you need to have a look at the culture. You really need to look at it all angles. And I do believe we shouldn't give too much power to the players. That power and trust should be earned as well. I do agree it, because at the end of the day, if a player doesn't like a coach or he doesn't like the way he's working, and he just goes to a CEO or director or president and he says, listen here, I don't like this guy, or this isn't working for us as a group, they're influencing the whole group. And yes, I have seen teams in France where the coach really was at fault. He really is at fault. So those are the questions we need to ask. Is it justified? Are the standards maybe too high? And I really do wish the All Blacks well on their new journey, because we've got some big games coming up next, or this year, actually. We've got an All Black Test series, and I know they are going to be facing a few tough test matches in July as well. We will always respect the All Blacks, and it's not easy to see something like this happen to an unbelievable human being and a top coach. Was it merited? Yes, no. That's not the goal of this video. All I wanted you guys to think about is that there are different angles that you need to look at when it comes to performance. Firstly, you got to define performance, you got to define success, you got to understand where players are coming from, coaches. You need to understand why things are not going accordingly. That is the main thing. But anyway, guys, hope you guys are doing well, and hope you guys enjoyed the Champions Cup this weekend. Lots of rugby. And if you are not subscribed to my channel, please do so and subscribe and help me to grow the channel. And also, if you are not in my school community, all you have to do is check the link in the description below, and you can join it. All right, guys, that's me, Coach G, and wish you guys an unbelievable day. Ciao, ciao.